A lot of people enjoy hiking, being in the wilderness, the calm of the forest, long walks through open landscape, the sound of wind moving through the trees. But there are places where distance becomes a problem. Places where if something goes wrong, there's no one to call, no emergency services, no immediate rescue. And if something happens there, it happens without witnesses. You're in the middle of nowhere when it starts. Someone behind you screams. Not a warning, not a word. A sound sharp enough to cut through everything else. When you turn, they're on the ground. Another person drops to their knees, retching violently. Someone else screams, sharp, sudden, and then goes quiet. One by one, people around you begin to collapse. You stand there, watching, unable to do anything, unable to make sense of what you're seeing. The forest stays quiet. The wind keeps moving through the trees. And then there's no one left standing. With no supplies, no guide, no map, only questions with no answer. Lyudmila Korovina was an experienced hiking instructor, recognized as a master of sports in hiking. In the summer of 1993, she planned an expedition into the Khamar-Daban mountain range, a popular hiking destination at the time. She was joined by 6 of her students: Alexander Sacha Krysin, Tatiana Filipenko, Denis Zvashkin, Valentina Utochenko, Victoria Salesova, and Timur Vapanov. Korovina was familiar with the region. This was not her first time hiking in the Khamar-Daban area, and the group had trained under her guidance for the trip. Other hiking groups were present in the area as well, including one led by her daughter Natalia. The plan was simple. They would begin their hike from their village of Murino on August 2nd, 1993, and rendezvous with Natalia's group on August 5th. For the first 2 days, conditions were favorable. The group ascended Mount Retransliator without major difficulty. On August 4th, as they began their descent, the weather changed. A sudden rainstorm swept through the area. Korovina decided they would camp in the open and continue the following day. Despite repeated attempts, the group was unable to start a fire that night. By the morning of August 5th, the rain had stopped. They managed to light a fire and prepare a hot meal before continuing their descent. What happened next would not be fully understood. According to the only surviving member of the expedition, the group resumed their hike with Korovina leading the way. Alexander Krysin, Sasha, who had been walking at the back, suddenly began to scream. When the others turned, they saw blood coming from his eyes and ears, froth forming around his mouth. Moments later, he collapsed and went still. Korovina ran to him and ordered the rest of the group to continue down the slope, attempting to wake him. They had taken only a few steps when Korovina herself cried out. She showed the same symptoms: bleeding from the eyes and nose, foam at the mouth, before collapsing on top of Krysin. Tatiana Filipenko was the first one to reach them, but she began clawing at her throat as if she could not breathe. She clawed toward a nearby rock and repeatedly struck her head against it until she stopped moving. Valentina stood frozen, unable to react. Denis Zvashkin hid behind the rock. Victoria Salesova and Timur Vapanov collapsed while running, vomiting blood, tearing at their clothes, clawing at their throats. Realizing that only Denis and Valentina remained, they attempted to flee. It did not last long. Denis collapsed shortly afterward, leaving Valentina alone. She ran, carrying only a tent and the clothes she was wearing. She fled downhill until she felt she had put enough distance between herself and whatever had just happened. That night, she set up a tent and slept. The next morning, she understood that survival meant food and that all the supplies were with the others. She returned. All of them remained exactly where she had left them. Valentina gathered whatever she could and left. She followed some power lines until she reached a river, then traced it south. On August the 9th, she encountered a group of Ukrainian kayakers. She screamed, she waved, and then she collapsed into their arms. The official autopsy report stated that all of them had bruised lungs. The conclusion was that Krysin, Filipenko, Bapanov, Salesova, and Shvashkin died of hypothermia, and that Korovina suffered a heart attack. But in true Soviet fashion, this made no sense. Over the years, many theories have emerged to explain what happened. Some have argued for the simplest explanation, that the group succumbed to hypothermia after failing to start a fire that night. But that does not account for the blood reported coming from their eyes and ears. And hypothermia does not explain why someone would repeatedly smash their head against a rock until they collapsed. Another theory suggests that the group may have stumbled upon a military experiment and were killed to keep it a secret. But that was a well-traveled mountain range at that time of the year, and it does not explain why Valentina was left alive or why there were no signs of a struggle. Other explanations exist, but none of them account for what happened. 7 people went into the mountains that summer. One of them came back. None of the explanations fully account for what happened. Valentina has maintained her version ever since. The others never returned. The reports were archived. The official version remained. The investigation ended. Nothing more was done. And this was not the first time this happened in the cold, inhospitable mountains of the Soviet Union.